In America, in America, in America. What's considered the good life in America? The good life in America is considered the ability to consume. The ability to consume. That is what constitutes the good life here in America. As long as you have the ability to go out and buy a bunch of useless stuff that in a few weeks' time it's going to mean nothing to you. You're gonna forget about it, right? That's why when I'm reading about Donald Trump and this tariff war, what is he threatening the countries with? I was reading it this morning in the Wall Street Journal. I read that one. I read foreign news as well. Ground, different news outlets to get a balanced picture. You know, I understand that a lot of propaganda is in the media, but I try to get different sources. But reading this is in the Wall Street Journal is just quoting his words, what he actually said out of his mouth. And what he said, he wrote this letter to the other countries. I guess he decided to give it more time before he institutes these tariffs. What he said was, if you don't play ball with my terms, you will lose access to the greatest consumer market. Consumer market. Notice he said, it struck out to me when he said the biggest consumer market. He didn't say the biggest producer market, because we all know what is the biggest producer market right now. That's China. Now, the U.S. at one time was the producer. From what I understand, and from what I studied and read, I wasn't alive during that time. In this incarnation, let me say, in this incarnation, I wasn't there. But what I understand is that you had the steel industry. The U.S. had it on lock. The car manufacturing in Detroit, the U.S. had that on lock. A few other industries that the U.S. had on lock. But those times are gone. And so now we are the biggest consumers, which is, to me, useless. Because it's like a vulture. All a vulture does is just consume carcasses. Doesn't really do anything, right? You have other animals that also consume, but animals and insects that consume but they offer a benefit. Think about the bumblebee. You like honey, right? I like honey. The bumblebee consumes the pollen from the flowers, and then it takes that pollen and it makes honey that we all enjoy, that has health benefits, right? But a consumer, it just consumes and it doesn't produce, and it just creates waste. And that's what we have become. We're not producers. We are consumers. And it's vulnerable. It's a vulnerable state to be in. It's a vulnerable state for us to be in. Right? But as long as the USD still has the power that it has, as long as the US military still has the power and the strength that it has, these are really the only things that is keeping the other powers in check because of this. Outside of this, outside of those two things, we will be gobbled up like that. And all you patriots, all you, I'm so proud to be an American. Okay. What, as a whole, what is there to be proud of in these days and times? Like I said, you may have had that sentiment back in the days, in the early 1900s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Maybe you could say, I'm proud because we are the best producers. We are producers. But now, what is there to be proud about with just being a consumer country and knowing that the only thing that is holding you up is your military and the fact that the USD is still powerful? But that's changing. We all know this. The thing called BRICS is offering a threat to it, because if these countries could say, hey, China, we produce all this stuff for the US, and US is the biggest consumer market. But if other countries can start to get their weight up, and let's say, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that's BRICS, right? Let's say the other countries say, hey, all those things that you producing, let's say India, right? China, all those things that you producing, hey, we got all these software engineers, that are hired by these American companies. Hey, and they're making, big money. Hey, we got a lot of them. They can buy. We got a consumer market right here. China. Forget about the US. Forget about they still on this high horse of, being this superpower, and we already know who's in charge and whatnot. Forget about that. Come over here. We got a willing consumer base that's willing to buy your products. What would happen? And in Brazil too. What would happen? What would happen is these countries would not be dependent on the U.S. consumer market anymore. And when that happens, the U.S. and us are in trouble. With that being said, like, share, subscribe. Peace.